Easiest 4 marks. Work out an estimate for the mean of the weekly earnings. Well, we know mean is our average. It's our meany one as it requires a lot of work. Our first step is we add 2 additional columns. The first column is what we call the midpoint. And our last column is our midpoint multiplied by our frequency. To find the midpoint, we just go in the middle of each class interval. i.e. what's in the middle of 150 and 250? In this case, 200. Look at our next class interval. What's in the middle of 250 and 350? In this case, 300. Look at our next class interval. What's in the middle of 350 and 450? In this case, 400. Look at our next class interval. What's in the middle of 450 and 550? In this case, 500. And finally, look at our last class interval. What's in the middle of 550 and 650? In this case, 600. For my last column, I do the midpoint multiplied by the frequency. Look at my first row. So 200 times 1 will give us 200. Look at my next row. 300 times 11, that will give us 3,300. Look at my next row. 400 times 5, that will give us 2,000. Look at my next row. 500 times 0. Anything times by 0 is still 0. And my last row, 600 times 3, that will give us 1,800. We always total our midpoint times frequency. Adding up our units, they're all 0, so that stays as 0. Looking at our tens column, again, they're all 0, so that stays as 0. Looking at our hundreds column, 2 added 3 is 5, and 5 added is 13. So 3 down, carry the 1. Looking at our thousands column, 3 added 2 is 5, add 1 is 6, add the 1 I carried, gives us 7. So my total midpoint times frequency is 7,300. I also total my frequency column. In this case, I know my frequency should add up to 20, as there was 20 people. As I'm calculating estimate for the mean, we know the mean is the average. So I'm going to do the total of my midpoint times frequency. In this case, 7,300. And I'm going to divide by my total frequency, the total number of people, which in this case we know is 20. On a non-calculator paper, as both top and bottom end in a 0, I can divide top and bottom by 10. And 730 divided by 2 gives an estimate for the mean to be 365. Nadia says the mean may not be the best average to represent this information. Do you agree with Nadia? You must justify your answer. Well, looking at our data, in this case, I do agree with Nadia because the mean is affected by outliers, i.e. extreme values. So looking at the weekly earnings, here, these 3 people earning a lot more than the rest of them. So the median may be better.